I think there are times when you just draw a line, and I think a line should have been drawn under Michael Matheson's time as a Scottish member of Parliament. Politics has its fair share of spectacular downfalls, but few involve an iPad teenage football enthusiast and an £11,000 roaming phone bill. Yet this is precisely the ignominious legacy of Michael Matheson, the former Scottish Health Secretary, who has now announced his departure from the political stage ahead of the 2026 Holyrood elections. He should have gone before, and I don't quite understand why it should have taken so long. And it's it's sort of shocking, isn't it? Really, that somebody should linger on with excuse after excuse. It was while this is technically about misunderstanding data roaming charges, and I think I'm entirely sympathetic to that. It became a parable of political misjudgment, public trust, and of course the dangers of letting your children near your parliamentary iPad. He was once a stalwart of the SNP. He's announced his retirement from Holyrood after 27 years in the Scottish Parliament. He's held multiple senior positions, including Justice Secretary, Transport Secretary, and somewhat ironically, Health Secretary. But his legacy will be forever overshadowed by this inglorious claim to fame, the iPad scandal. And for those unfamiliar, let's try and summarise, if I may. In 2022, he went on a family holiday to Morocco. Nothing inherently scandalous about that, but upon his return, a rather eye-watering £11,000 data roaming bill appeared on his parliamentary expenses. When questioned, he insisted the device had been used solely for official government work. A noble defence. Principled stance. A story with only one minor flaw: it wasn't true. As it turned out, the parliamentary iPad had been used as a data hotspot by his teenage sons to stream football, and presumably this wasn't in the service of improving Scotland's health outcomes. And when the truth emerged, Matheson was left with two choices: face the wrath of Hollywood or pretend he was launching a radical new SNP policy of taxpayer-funded entertainment subscriptions, and he opted for the former. The scandal snowballed, and initially he attempted to charge the expense to his MSP allowances, essentially passing the cost onto the public purse. When outrage ensued, he grudgingly repaid the money himself, so he had the money to do that. But the damage was done. The parliamentary corporate body found him guilty of a serious breach of expenses rules, resulting in the longest suspension ever handed down of 27 sitting days, with an accompanying salary suspension of 54 days. And so a career that had spanned decades, that had weathered multiple changes in SNP leadership, came crashing down over a mistake so avoidable it barely qualifies as an error. And the mistake isn't misjudging the roaming charges. The mistake is not standing up and saying, "I'm sorry, this was something that happened in error. Maybe I didn't know about it. I will foot the difference." But in fact, he actually blamed his children. Now, there may be some argument in saying his children shouldn't use the device. I think it's very difficult to control children, and they pick up anything that's within reach. But in not immediately admitting it, that's the problem. And in attempting to claim it was legitimate parliamentary work, well, you may initially think it is. You may initially not know the information. I'm sure that was his position. I'm sure he didn't initially know. But assuming all this would quietly disappear without taking control, that is the problem. It's about responsibility in the end. There are many things that happen that we don't automatically know, and we take responsibility for them, or we draw a line. I've spent the last week or so trying to get hospital treatment for having fallen over, and today I went to a hospital and I paid over £100 for a consultation, and the doctor very sweetly thought that I'd broken my neck, which may well be the case, who knows. But the insurance company has delayed and delayed and delayed. And frankly, there just comes a point where you draw the line and you say, no more. I was left in the hospital all day waiting for the go-ahead from the insurance company. And I've still not got it. I'm drawing the line because I'm not prepared to be embarrassed any longer. And I shall sort this out independently. And that's what this man should do. That's what this man should do, or should have done. The scandal symbolizes so much more than dodgy expenses. It epitomizes a growing malaise within the SNP, an erosion of discipline, a disconnect from public perception, an entitlement problem among some of its senior figures. And the Matheson initially seemed oblivious to the sheer inappropriateness of the claim, suggests a political culture where scrutiny is underestimated, where financial propriety can be, let's say, flexible. And his departure is part of a broader exodus from the SNP benches. Nicola Sturgeon, Humza Yousaf, and a host of others are leaving the stage, a tacit admission that the tide has turned against them. But at least they recognise that it's time to draw a line. Drawing a line doesn't mean that anything has gone wrong, doesn't it? It's not about that. It's about drawing a line and saying, I'm not prepared to put myself out there any longer. This isn't working. And Matheson's resignation is particularly emblematic because it wasn't a political choice in his case, but an inevitability, and he should have seen that inevitability. Just as I should have seen the inevitability when an insurance company can't be contacted, when it approves one hospital and then the hospital doesn't know who it is or what it is. When, there just comes a point where there are so many red flags that you have to say in the end, this is not working. Draw a line. Because otherwise you go mad. This man should have paid the £11,000 bill and shouldn't have been so, what do we say, parsimonious or something, because that's ruined his career. And I'm sure it's ruined his sanity. In the end, there's something almost tragic about it, isn't there? Here's a man who served for decades, who held high office, who was entrusted with serious responsibilities, and yet his legacy will forever be reduced to a footnote in the annals of expense scandals, remembered not for policies enacted or battles fought, but for an iPad, a football match, and a bill so ludicrous it reads like a satirical punchline. The lesson here? Perhaps it's time that the public trust perhaps it's time that we recognise that public trust is a fragile thing. Perhaps it's that political downfall comes in the most unexpected forms. Or perhaps it's just that people don't know when to draw a line. I don't know if I know when to draw a line, but perhaps I'm drawing my lines too late. But there comes a point after you waste day after day, you just have to say, I've survived this long. I've survived most of the week. I've survived 6 days with what the doctor thinks is a broken neck. I can certainly survive long enough to get back to the UK. I don't need to be messed around day after mind-numbing day by an insurance company that is playing games. I don't need to be messed around day after mind-splitting day by MPs or by public servants who don't know what is the right behaviour and what is the wrong behaviour, who are just hoping by hanging on for another 24 hours, it's going to make any difference. It's not. And that's the point. That's what I mean about this red line. There just comes a point where you have to say enough is enough. And so many politicians today don't know. And they need to learn. Michael Matheson, the man with the tablet, the most expensive football stream in history. I suppose we should just sort of say, thank you for your service. Now, go. But, he's not going yet. He's going eventually, rather like Nadine Dorries. Why do these people not understand? There's a time to say, that's it.